Oxygen is a survival city builder. Build your city around the oxygen center and ensure your people's survival in a post-apocalyptic future threatened by crack explosions, deadly winds, sounds like my arse, droughts and frosts. Lead your people and, more importantly, keep the oxygen center running. So it is a survival building game. The background to this story is something a little bit different and interesting. So the world has effectively come to an end because of these gases that are rising through the Earth's surface, and they've effectively stopped people being able to breathe and have killed the vast majority of people. Your job is to survive with the remaining people that are left by building various buildings. But oxygen is of course crucial in a world where there are cracks appearing all over the place and releasing this deadly toxic gas. The population basically just walk around in hazmat suits, which helps them breathe. So they need to be able to breathe to be able to function properly. So there are oxygen supplies directly to their homes where they live, but you can also switch on oxygen supplies to their workplaces. But remember, there is a main electricity generator in the middle of your town that produces electricity, which in turn produces oxygen, which in turn is pushed into these buildings. The more oxygen you are choosing to supply, the higher the demand on your electricity, which means a higher requirement for coal. And you can also use the gas that's coming up through the Earth's crust and onto the Earth's surface as power. You need to build these gas extractors which convert that gas, the deadly gas, into power and in turn into oxygen. The game throws curveballs your way all the time. There are savage windstorms which blow around presumably much more of this toxic gas and dust, which makes things far more difficult. People will get ill. You have to balance medical facilities. You can then you really then have to switch on the energy booster to allow everybody to get oxygen into their workplaces, because if they don't have that, they basically get ill far quicker, so it uses up far more resource. There's droughts and there's also ice, so there's extreme conditions which make it very hard to win this. Once your electricity generator ends up at 0 in terms of the amount of power it can produce, it's game over, you lose. So things I like about this game, and bear in mind of course I have reviewed this in the past, so there may be some differences here, but what do I think about the game as it is now as a full release game? So the good things, it's a good premise. I like the idea of this post-apocalyptic world, but not through war, not through alien invasion, anything like that, but through something which I guess would be fictional, because we'd probably know about the possibility of this, but all of this toxic gas rising through the Earth. I really like that idea, something a little bit different. The tutorial is pretty good. There's also a wiki in here as well. The tutorial is good at explaining the basics and why things are like they are. No worries on that one at all, but I don't think you'd be able to go into this cold necessarily, so it is important there is a good tutorial in place. There's loads of different buildings on here that you can unlock, all ranging from decorative to medical, to research, to housing, to resource gathering. There's lots and lots of things on here, but most of it does need unlocking, and that's something we will come to in a moment as to why that aspect itself might be a negative. But the amount of buildings that are available in this game are pretty good. The UI is really good. It has changed since the earlier version that I also reviewed. It's cleaner, it's better looking, everything's placed better, it just works, and I think they've done pretty well with this. Everything makes sense and everything is in the right place. It's also such a genuine challenge, and there's a lot of balancing to do here. You have to keep your citizens alive, of course, but you also need to be able to do enough gathering of resources to prepare for these extraordinary events, you know, going back to what I was saying about the extreme winds and the droughts and the ice. So you've got to balance your population, fit them into the right jobs that require them at the time, shift them around, move them left, right and centre, just to be able to basically fulfill what you need to do. And there are tasks to the game as well which give you certain points and certain resources as rewards. So again, as part of those tasks, you have to balance a lot of things on the map and with your population. Visually, I think it's okay. I think it looks nice up to a point. It gets you into the zone of what the game is trying to give you in terms of the theme, so it does work. I think some of the buildings and the scrap cars and the scrap trains that you see on the map that you can salvage, I think they look a bit poor. You can zoom in to an extent, they just don't look that good, but I think the buildings look okay, the ones that you build. The population, I mean, they're all wearing hazmat suits anyway, so there's not much detail on there, but I think overall it looks nice, apart from some of these salvageable ruins where I think they do look a bit cheap and nasty, which is unfortunate. So that is a good and a bad in a way. I just think there's a lot of potential here, really. I think if the developers do look at improving things, which I know already since it's been released the early April this year, they have been making changes and fixes, so they are responding to feedback. Okay, so on to some negatives now. One of the ones that really stuck out to me straight away was the music. There's about 3 tracks seemingly on some sort of loop, but they are really bad. I just find them annoying after a while. They just feel amateur sort of sounding. I'm not keen. I think they are trying to sound almost apocalyptic-y. That's not a word, I appreciate that. But they are trying to sort of sound like that, but it just gives you a bit of an earache after a while. So yeah, I feel like, you know, just turn the music down a bit after a while so you don't have to put up with it, or just totally off. But I think there could be a bit better soundtrack for this game, really, or at least a bit more variation. As I said in my last video for this game as well, the voice acting has not improved. The opening titles of the game, where there's a video that explains what's going on, sounds robotic. I thought it was human to start with, and then some of the words it was saying were just really weirdly spoken. So then I started to think it was possibly an AI voice. I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what this was in terms of AI or human voice, but it just sounded weird. Coupled with that, the voice acting, if you click on characters or your population, you can click on them individually and see all their statistics, which is actually really good and part of the good UI that I referred to earlier. Every time you click on someone, they say something, and they range between characters. They sound like they're ranging from characters in Sesame Street to chimney sweeps from Victorian London to Dick Van Dyke's, well, Victorian chimney sweeps impression from Mary Poppins. But yeah, it's really bad and inconsistent and very strange.
I collect whatever you need. I'm going to fill my oxygen tank.
I'm afraid of the winds.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Another negative is actually the speed of the game. I just feel the whole thing was a bit slow. Yes, you can speed up the game, 2 different extra speeds on top of standard speed, but research is painfully slow even when you've got maximum amount of people working in your research stations, and it just seems a bit unrealistic in terms of the research points you need to unlock things. The first couple of things you unlock, you need about 50, 60, 70 research points. That's fine. But then some things, as you can see on the research screen, as you have a look at the list of things that you can research, thousands of research points, and it seems to take a hell of a long time just to get 10. And you're thinking, how the hell am I ever going to get any of this stuff done? Perhaps it speeds up later, but it just seems a little bit annoying and unrealistic, and not very helpful in being able to enjoy the game. The amount of research points you need and the speed it seems to go through. My final main issue with this is if someone ever uses the medical facilities, they might be assigned to the fishing post. When they go in, they are automatically converted to a constructor, which is basically someone who doesn't have a role assigned to them, so they help construct buildings. When they come out of the medical facility, they do not return to their old job, so you have to try and remember where they belong to. So definitely I think something does need to improve there. So anybody going into a medical facility needs to come out and return to their place of work, because it's a ball ache. Just keep having to monitor everyone and remember where they were working. Overall, I am really torn with this. I really like some of the ideas here, and I do enjoy playing it. I think there is a lot of potential, as I mentioned earlier, but I think the speed of the game being so slow with research and things happening, building is quite slow, waiting for new arrivals, for your population to arrive from the submarine seems to take a long time. Even when you're going on maximum speed, everything just feels slow, and for me that's a bit of a put off. I'm not impatient, but this just does feel that bit too slow, and I think if it was a bit quicker, things would get done faster, you'd get involved in more aspects of the game quicker, and it would hold your attention. I probably will play this again after I see some patches released and things like that, but I'm probably going to leave it there for a moment in terms of me playing it, and then just see what happens in the future. But it's not a bad game. It's a good game, but perhaps just that little bit too slow.